Professor, Rector Magnificus, Professor, good to see you again. I was just saying that the fact that Poland is now spending so much on defense is also because of the sound financial policies you introduced here. So thank you. And it's great to be back in Warsaw and to see everyone here in the room and also following online. In my first speech as Secretary General in December, I said I wanted to start a conversation with the 1 billion people living in NATO countries about our security. And what better place to continue that conversation than here in Poland? You are truly a leader on defense, spending 4.7% of GDP this year. You are a strong supporter for Ukraine. And Poland has put security at the heart of your EU presidency. In my meetings earlier today, I thanked President Duda and Prime Minister Tusk, not just for talking the talk, but for walking the walk when it comes to our collective security. Now, I want to take some time with all of you to address the questions about the strengths of the transatlantic bond and to sketch out the path to our NATO summit in The Hague in June, following my recent discussions in Washington with President Trump. I know that things have been moving fast in recent months, and many of us feel less secure in this rapidly changing world. Russia's war against Ukraine is raging on, and there are concerns about how it will end. However it ends, Russia will remain the most significant and direct threat to our security. Russia is ramping up its defense spending and has moved to a war economy. It is rapidly rebuilding its armed forces, built on Chinese technology, backed by deadly Iranian drones and North Korean troops and missiles. Putin has not given up his ambition to reshape the global security order. And he is not alone. China, Russia, Iran and North Korea are increasing their military cooperation and exercises. Beijing is carrying out its own massive military build-up, including of its nuclear forces, with no limits or transparency. What's happening in Europe matters for the Indo-Pacific and vice versa. Securing lasting peace for Ukraine is essential for European security and for global stability. The world is watching. I welcome that President Trump has broken the deadlock with Russia and that talks are ongoing towards a ceasefire. I also welcome that the UK and France are leading efforts to contribute to a lasting peace, which we will again discuss tomorrow in Paris. At the same time, I know there are questions about the strength of the transatlantic bond and the United States' commitment to European security. There is tough rhetoric. There are difficult debates between Europe and America over trade and tariffs. And there are calls to revive ideas of European autonomy. Let me be absolutely clear. This is not the time to go it alone. Not for Europe or North America. The global security challenges are too great for any of us to face on our own. When it comes to keeping Europe and North America safe, there is no alternative to NATO. Without the US, UK, Turkey, Canada, Norway and Iceland, it is impossible to imagine the defense of Europe. And nothing can replace America's nuclear umbrella, the ultimate guarantor of our security. A strong transatlantic alliance remains the bedrock of our defense. And stronger European allies are a unique strategic asset, which allows the US to promote peace through strength on the global stage. When it comes to security and defense, I'm absolutely confident that the United States remains committed to NATO and to Article 5. Don't just take my word for it. Listen to President Trump, who has repeatedly stated his commitment to a strong NATO. Listen to the strong bipartisan support in the US Congress. And listen to the American people, 3/4 of whom support NATO according to a recent poll. I heard this again loud and clear in meetings in the White House with the President and on Capitol Hill 2 weeks ago. And it's not only about words, but also about actions. US troops lead our NATO forces here in Poland. American strategic bombers patrol European skies. And US aircraft carriers send a message of strength at sea. Yes, Europe needs to know that Uncle Sam still has our back. But America also needs to know that its NATO allies will step up and play their full part, without restrictions and without capability gaps. It's only fair. Reassurance is a two-way street. The US commitment to NATO comes with a clear expectation that European allies and Canada take more responsibility for our shared security. So, at our summit in The Hague, we will begin a new chapter for our Transatlantic alliance, where we will build a stronger, fair and more lethal NATO to face a more dangerous world. A stronger NATO means investing and producing even more for our defense. A fair NATO means all allies doing their fair share. And a more lethal NATO means that where we will always remain a defensive alliance, we will always be ready and able to do whatever it takes to stay safe. When it comes to spending more, European allies and Canada have stepped up with huge new investments. Last year alone, they increased defense spending by 20%. And over the last decade, they added an extra 700 billion for defense. And many have pledged to go further and faster. Poland is leading the way, alongside Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, moving to spending 5% of GDP in the coming years. The German Parliament has unlocked more than $1 trillion in extra defense and infrastructure spending. Czechia, Denmark, Sweden, France, Finland, Norway and the United Kingdom have committed to considerably ramp up spending. And the European Union, only last week, came out with an initiative to free up to 800 billion for defense. All this is nothing short of a sea change for NATO's collective defense. This acceleration is absolutely necessary, and we have to keep our foot on the gas. When it comes to producing more, there are also great examples. Europe and North America are now producing millions of rounds of 155mm shells. New gunpowder and TNT factories are being built across the alliance, from France to Finland. And there are more fifth-generation fighters flying in alliance skies than ever before. We are also producing more together. Take the F-35, which combines American ingenuity with British know-how, Italian finesse and Dutch technical expertise. European companies are supporting ammunition production from Texas to Florida. And the US and Europe are building a new Patriot missile factory in Bavaria, in Germany. This is the kind of industrial win-win we need more of, not less of. This is how we rebuild our industry together. And this is how we create jobs and growth on both sides of the Atlantic. There are so many opportunities to boost our transatlantic defense industry even more. There are hundreds of billions of extra euros and dollars to go around. But we must go much further and faster to ramp up production across the alliance. The need and the urgency are crystal clear. Finally, European allies and Canada are also doing more for our shared security through NATO. They lead 7 of our 8 multinational deployments on our eastern flank. An Italian commander leads NATO's peacekeeping mission in Kosovo. A Dutch commander leads our training and advisory mission in Iraq. And European allies lead on NATO air policing over Iceland, the Western Balkans and the Baltics. When undersea infrastructure in the Baltic Sea was threatened this winter, European allies stood up in record time through NATO's Baltic Sentry, without the need for a single US ship. European allies and Canada are also playing a bigger role in Ukraine. Last year, they provided almost 60% of NATO's military aid to Ukraine. NATO's command in Germany is now coordinating security assistance and training for Ukraine, with logistics hubs, including here in Poland. And Poland also hosts NATO's Joint Analysis Training and Education Center, a joint initiative with Ukraine to capture important lessons and innovations from this terrible war. Over the last decade, NATO has carried out a generational transformation of our alliance. We have significantly increased our presence on our eastern flank, invested in new capabilities and military infrastructure, and revitalized our defense industry, backed by large-scale exercises to demonstrate our commitment to each other's defense. At our summit in The Hague, we will need to do even more to ensure all allies do their fair share, based on ambitious new targets for all NATO allies, strengthening our capabilities, readiness and deterrence, including air and missile defense, long-range missiles and more ground forces. This will enable Europeans to take on a greater share of our collective defense, while maintaining strong American commitment and presence in Europe. So we know what we need to do to stay safe today and strong tomorrow. We know exactly what forces, resources and capabilities every ally needs to provide. And we have the plans and procedures in place to defend our own nations and support Ukraine. NATO allies represent half of the world's economic and military might. 2 continents, 32 nations and 1 billion people. Together, in NATO, Europe and North America are unbeatable, today and in the future. So to our 1 billion people, I say this: be assured. The transatlantic bond is strong. And yes, we will make NATO a stronger, fairer and more lethal alliance. That is how we all stay safe in a more dangerous world. So thank you. And I look forward to our discussion.
Thank you very much, Secretary General, for your important words and for inviting us to thinking more about the importance of transatlantic links. It is truly also reassuring that we heard your words about the future of NATO. It is for the first time, I have impression, Director, we are co-organizing the event together with the Polish Institute of International Affairs. I invited on the stage also its director, Jarosław Ćwiek-Karpowicz, PhD. Director, I will just give you now the leading position in this meeting to ask the first questions to our guests.
Thank you. Yeah.
Is it working?
Mine? Yes, as well. Okay, so once again, welcome on behalf of the Warsaw School of Economics and the Polish Institute of International Affairs. As you see, we gather here both the student expert community. We know that you had a very tight schedule and meetings with many Polish politicians, but I'm not quite sure if you are ready to answer very tough questions from students and experts on the very last moment of your... Okay, so this is exactly what we would like to hear from you, what you said about, transatlantic relations, about, let's say, the broader picture, what happens in Europe matters in the Pacific, no doubt. But as you know, now the Polish public opinion is very much aware of what's going on in Ukraine. And in your speech, you try to just try to describe the situation. So I would like to ask you for a very tough question about the peace talks between US administration and Russia and Ukraine. As you mentioned several times in your previous speeches, we need a stable and strong deal. And we here are not sure if such a strong deal is feasible. So my first question, how such a strong deal should look like, what kind of security guarantees should Ukraine be offered to make it impossible for Russia to attack again? To attack again, it means to NATO.
Well, first of all, I am glad that President Trump broke the deadlock, because I feel that was necessary. And I'm positive about the peace talks being conducted now under his leadership. And I think that is important. It will be a step-by-step process. NATO gets regular updates. I know the Europeans are as much as possible involved. But in the end, of course, these are talks conducted by the Americans with the Ukrainians and the Russians. The Americans and all of us, we always have been very clear. We need to bring Ukraine to a durable, a lasting peace. Vladimirovich Putin should never try again to attack Ukraine. So I cannot predict now exactly what the peace deal and the ceasefire, etc. will look like, because that is now being discussed. But we are all very clear that whatever exactly is the outcome, it has to be durable. Then the question is, how do you do that? There are many options. I'm not a scholar myself, but of course we see what the French and the Brits are doing. They are working hard to bring together European countries to potentially help maintaining peace in Ukraine. There are other ideas floating around, but the most important thing is that these discussions are now taking place, but obviously you first need a peace deal before you can keep a peace. You can only keep a peace if there is a peace to keep. And that is exactly the process we are now in. And again, I'm optimistic and I'm positive about the American initiative. I think it was important because we had somehow to break 3 years into this terrible war. We had to break the deadlock.
If I just, before allowing the audience to have your questions, their questions, I would like maybe just to continue this about the Russian demands, because as you know, we as a relatively new NATO member, we are very much aware of the so-called division of the old and new NATO. And as you perfectly know, Russia several times mentioned one of the conditions for a stable peace and ceasefire is to, let's say, enforce NATO to withdraw their troops and equipment from the territory of new NATO members. So my question to you is, don't you think so that such a goal or such a, let's say, demands from Russia's side, which are somehow well heard and repeated maybe also by Americans, can make a real division in NATO between members? And what is your message to the Central Eastern Europe?
Well, first of all, Putin can put whatever he wants on the table. That's for him. But he has absolutely no say in how we organize ourselves within the 32 alliance. Absolutely no say at all. And I hate this whole idea of having a sort of two-tier NATO, that you have somehow the 8 countries on the eastern flank different from the other 24 allies. With the latest missile technology coming out of Russia, the difference between an attack on Warsaw or an attack in Madrid is 10 minutes. So we are all on the eastern flank. Amsterdam is at the eastern flank. London is at the eastern flank. Even Washington is at the eastern flank. It is not only the formal 8 eastern flank. It is important to realize this. And Putin has to know that when he would try to get a square kilometer of Estonia or of Poland or of Slovakia or of Spain or Portugal for that matter, that our reaction will be devastating, that the full onslaught of NATO will be upon him. That is the deterrence, that is the collective defense. And whatever he wants to put on the table is up to him, but it is up to us to react. And when it comes to the dealings of the 32 and how we organize NATO, he is absolutely not involved in this. He has no say in this. This has no relation to any peace on Ukraine. We have to be very clear.
No doubt that your task is to mobilize Europeans and all NATO members to spend more for defense. You are a very well experienced politician and also now NATO diplomat, let's say. So you also mentioned countries who exceed this 2%, but there are also still some countries who are just below this. And you, as one of the longest-serving prime minister in Europe, I'm not counting Viktor Orban, who is a prime minister in Hungary, but you are probably one of the longest-serving prime minister. With such experience as being a prime minister, when you concern mainly how not to spend, but how to collect money, how you would like to encourage Europeans to spend more on defense?
First of all, by understanding that we do not do this because the Americans want us to do it, but because we need to do it because of Russia and the threat. By the way, by spending more, you will also have a fair burden sharing with the US, because the US rightly is irritated about the fact that in Europe we have collected the peace dividend, and I myself as Prime Minister was part of that. And that was wrong. Luckily the Netherlands is now spending over 2%. But collectively we have collected the peace dividend. This was not, and rightly the US is irritated. So by spending more because of the Russian threat, the effect of that is also that you have a fairish burden sharing with the United States. And yes, there are a few countries not yet at 2%. I would love to say that since I came in on the 1st of October, things started to change. That was not true. But there happened something on the 20th of January in the US, and since then, look what happened. The Belgians have been saying we want to get to 2% by this summer. Spain now is saying they want to get to 2% this summer. We know that Portugal, Italy, they all have these debates now. And I tell them that, well, now I am calling you to ask you to deliver the 2% by this summer so that collectively we can move considerably north of that 2% because we have to spend much, much more than 2%. But now I'm calling you, but you might get a very patient man from Washington on the line if you don't listen to me. And I would love to listen into those phone calls, but let's hope they are not necessary. And at this moment, I must say that all these non-2%ers are having genuine debates to move to the 2% before summer.
From our side, for sure, all the best, and we wish you good luck.
Thank you. And you are leading the pack. You are at 4.7. It's amazing.
Yeah. So now I would like to open the floor for questions from the audience. If you are ready, please.
Good morning. Does it work? Okay. Good morning. My name is Marcin Telikowski. I'm head of research at the Polish Institute of International Affairs, which is co-organizing this great event, this great public speech. Mr. Secretary General, thank you for a very optimistic picture which you have just painted with your speech and also with answers to Director Karpovich's questions. However, the feeling among the public opinion in many of allied states, and also the main topic of the debates among the think tankers here, so basically major European analytical and research institutions, is that basically we may not be that sure of the US continued involvement in NATO at the scale which we got used to. And one of the elements of this, I don't want to use the hard words, but mistrust perhaps in what will come next from the Trump administration, is, as many analysts read, the French President Macron's proposal on kind of adding a kind of an European dimension to the French national nuclear deterrent. And what does it tell you, this proposal, and how do you think it can be married with the next steps as regards adaptation of NATO to the Russian threat, which may be much more reliant on nuclear capabilities in the future, given the conventional weakness of Russia and the time they need to reconstitute its conventional capability? Thank you.
I highly respect the French and also the British nuclear deterrent. They are important. The French formerly outside NATO, UK more connected to NATO. But in the end, they are no alternative to the nuclear umbrella the US is providing us. When you look at the amount of nuclear warheads pointed at us from Russia, and increasingly, by the way, from China, who will get to 1,000 warheads by 2030, the only credible nuclear deterrent and ultimate guarantor of our freedom here is the United States of America. Don't kid yourself. There's no way the French and the Brits can replace this. And still, it is important that they have that nuclear deterrence. So I'm all for it, but it is not an alternative. And I know that in Europe, many people are still questioning, is the US still with us? Are they committed to NATO? Are they committed to Article 5? Then I would say, go back to your modern televisions, where you can easily watch again what happened 2 or 3 weeks ago, or go to YouTube or whatever, and watch the footage from the Macron visit to the Oval Office, the Starmer visit to the Oval Office, my own humble visit to the Oval Office. And in all these visits, the US made clear their total commitment to NATO and to Article 5. So if worrying about their commitment to Article 5 and to NATO is reason for you to get more anxious or to get your blood pressure up, I'm here to tell you it's not necessary. And there are reasons behind it, because the US realizes that for their collective defense connected to the Euro-Atlantic theater, including what they want to achieve in the Indo-Pacific, being together 32 allies. And yes, I know, the one ally, the US, in itself is over half of the total NATO economy. But to be there together, 32, working together as one group, also projecting NATO/American power in the world, is unbeatable. So and of course, there's their own defense and how we can help there and make sure. And the only time Article 5 was ever invoked was one day after 9/11, on the 12th of September 2001, one day after the terrible attacks by 4 airplanes in the US on 9/11, by George Robertson, the then Secretary General, leading that discussion in NATO. So only time Article 5. And then, of course, after that, when it came to Afghanistan, through NATO, bilaterally, many countries helping out in Iraq, we were there with our American allies. There is this collective history, there is this collective future, there is this collective understanding. And again, the present president stating this with emphasis. Yes, Mark, I'm committed to NATO, I'm committed to Article 5. So again, we can worry about many things, but let's stop worrying about this.
I identify 3 more questions, so maybe Professor Pisarska, please, floor is yours.
Hi, hello, Professor Katarzyna Pisarska. I'm a proud graduate of the Warsaw School of Economics, but also for 2 decades a proud faculty member of this school. I also chair the Warsaw Security Forum. We organize with NATO. That's how we know each other, Prime Minister, the Secretary General. And I wanted to thank you on the one side for being for so many years so clear on the type of threat Russia poses, not only to Ukraine, not only to NATO's eastern flank, but to Europe, the Transatlantic Alliance, and the world. But my question is not going to be an easy one. You've been sitting in the Oval Office with President Donald Trump, and I'm sure you had a lot of off-the-record conversations. Could you tell us, is the threat assessment of Russia in the mind of President Trump the same as it is in your mind and my mind? So what is the assessment of Russia today for the Trump administration?
Well, it is not for me, of course, and by the way, good to see you again, and thank you for all the work you are doing. Of course, not for me to be the spokesperson for the American government. But let me be absolutely clear. In my conversations with the American president and the American administration, these guys are experienced. They are not naive. They know with what and with whom they are dealing. And at the same time, they want to bring Ukraine to a durable peace. Because generally, and I think we all share this feeling, the hundreds of thousands of people dead or seriously wounded, the many cities being destroyed, it is unacceptable if this continues going forward. And we have to end this. And that's why I'm happy and glad for his leadership to break the deadlock. But I have confidence in what they are doing. We have been seeing over the last couple of weeks how they are conducting those talks in Saudi Arabia with a clear view of what they need to achieve. And what I know myself from my dealings with Putin in the years I was Prime Minister, and we had this economic relations, of course, we had a terrible MH17 disaster where Putin consistently did not deliver, consistently denied his responsibility, consistently in an extremely unacceptable, undecent way, did not take his share of the blame and come forward and give... I can still again become very angry when I think about it. And I know one thing when you have to deal with Putin, you cannot trust him and you will only get him to a deal at the last minute. And the Americans know this, and again, I think they are conducting these talks in exactly the right way. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now we are turning from expert to student community. And the question, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Antoni Świderski and I represent Geopolitics Ideas and Strategy Society. So my question is, with Finland joining NATO in 2023 and Sweden in 2024,
yes,
the alliance's border with Russia more than doubled in the northern direction. Will this extension shift the focus of NATO's High Command to the Arctic, where Russia is actively reinforcing its presence politically and militarily? We also see the US showing interest in this region. In your opinion, could this shared Euro-American focus on the Arctic help to bridge and to strengthen cooperation between the European Union and the United States? Thank you.
Well, I think, first of all, the fact that Finland and Sweden joined NATO, I don't think Putin intended this to happen when he started his full attack, onslaught on Ukraine in February 2022. And it is really important that it happened, that not the attack, but the joining of Sweden and Finland of NATO, the 31st and the 32nd member in the alliance. When it comes to the High North, we are really running risks because we know that China is using these sea routes. We know that Russia is rapidly arming there and rearming. We know we have a lack as an alliance, for example, of icebreakers. So that's the reason why, and this also came up in my talks in the White House, that as NATO, we will see how we can play a bigger role in getting these 7 countries, it's Canada, the US, it is Denmark through Greenland, Iceland, Norway, Sweden and Finland, to work together and to make sure that collectively we will make sure that the High North, the Arctic, stays safe. And that is clear. And so I really took that challenge from the American president We are dialoguing now with, more intensely with the 7 high North Arctic countries to see how also collectively we can strengthen our presence. Your second question was about the EU, but I couldn't completely...
So my second question was about EU, and in your opinion, could this shared Euro-American focus on the Arctic help to bridge and to strengthen cooperation between European Union and United States?
Well, I think this is more for NATO to help here with the 7 countries, because Canada and the US, of course, are not members of the European Union, and both are allies with the NATO. I would argue there's a big role for NATO here to play, and it is really about our how we confront China and Russia in that part of the world, more than for the European Union, I guess. But I hope I'm not now offending anyone in the EU. But I think that this is more for NATO, because these are 7 countries and 2 of them are not in the EU.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Iceland is not in the EU.
Maybe another question from...
And yeah, Norway.
Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Danila, and I also represent a student organization at Warsaw School of Economics, the Student Association for the Recovery of Ukraine.
Great.
And I would like to bring maybe a bit of a Ukrainian context into the discussion.
Please.
So,
But are you Ukrainian yourself?
Yeah, I am
okay,
Ukrainian.
great.
Yeah. So for Ukraine, and NATO membership has long been seen as the best option for ensuring our security, independence, and territorial integrity.
Yeah.
And looking at the recent developments, some things may suggest that those ties between Ukraine and NATO are weakening, at least in the eyes of Ukrainians. So given this quite maybe a bit pessimistic context, what alternatives, for example, can NATO offer Ukraine to maintain its security, and what role should NATO play in maintaining peace and security in the region, including Ukraine? Thank you.
I think there are 2 aspects to your question. One is that NATO extended the perspective of Ukraine becoming a member of the alliance. And this was repeated again in Washington during the last summit, where we clearly stated as an alliance that there is an irreversible path for Ukraine into NATO. I always also point out that we never said that Ukraine would become a member of the alliance as part of a peace deal. And what the Americans have said, that they have taken the view that as part of a peace deal, Ukraine should not become member of NATO, being subject to a peace deal. But that's, of course, separate from what will happen in the future. Then, when it comes to the cooperation between NATO and Ukraine, it is really very intensive. We, also coming out of the Washington Summit, we have the command in Wiesbaden, which is coordinating all the supply getting into Ukraine. Very much helped by Poland, because you have a big logistical hub here, making sure that the stuff really actually reaches Ukraine. We just last week set up this joint center, JTEC, here in Poland, where we will capture all the lessons from the terrible war in Ukraine, so that at least in the future, as an alliance and Ukraine together, so this is a joint NATO-Ukraine initiative, that we will make sure that we can apply them. We have had the NATO pledge coming out of Washington, and the pledge was that we would spend 40 billion in 2024 supporting Ukraine militarily. And the good news is that we spent over 50 billion, and close to 60% of that 50 billion coming from Canada and the European allies. So I would argue that other than the membership, which is more longer term, at least not part of a peace deal now, but let's see what happens in the future, and there is a clear commitment, again stated in Washington. But when it comes to the practical cooperation, it is very intense, and there are days that I'm twice on the phone with Zelensky, and many weeks go by where at least we speak once or twice. So it is a very intensive cooperation.
Thank you. And maybe last question, because I think we're running out of time, so please, Beata.
Batagurka Winter, University of Warsaw. Thank you for mentioning the missile technologies here, because it's exactly my question. As our Prime Minister mentioned today during the press conference earlier, that Poland has a specific project of isolating us from Russia by physical means, meaning the project Eastern Shield, or Shield of Eastern Flank. So my question is, shouldn't we discuss in Hague in the nearest future to extend this project to other countries, to the whole Eastern Flank? And shouldn't we be building these fences of like a wall of radars, satellites, sensors, etc., not only here in our country, but in the whole region? Thank you very much.
Well, first on East Shield, Shield East, whatever the exact translation is, I had some discussion with Donald Tusk on is it East Shield or Shield East? But I think it is a good initiative. And there is total sense to the initiative. I know that the EU has prioritized this initiative also as part of the ongoing discussions within the European Union about spending more money and making sure that collectively we are able to defend ourselves in this part of Europe. So I think that's good. If NATO can help, we will get involved, but I think it is an initiative which is clearly there and has a lot of merit. For the Hague Summit, what I hope coming out of the Hague Summit is that it will really be a splash, projecting the collective NATO power and therefore also American power on the world stage. Of course, defending the Euro-Atlantic, but I would even say the world stage, because it's not extending Article 5 to the Indo-Pacific, but working together as NATO also to make sure that we keep the Indo-Pacific safe. And that means spending more, it means producing more, it means a fair distribution between the US and other NATO allies. And as I said, it will be about the lethality of NATO, showing that yes, we will never be an offensive organization, we are a defensive organization, but don't dare to attack us, because you will not see the light of day again. And I hope that will be the real outcome of the Hague Summit, a splash, showing that reinvigorated alliance, standing together, one for all for one.
I was just informed that we have still a few minutes, maybe for 2 extra questions. So I know if you're ready. Yes? Okay, please.
Hello, my name is Melanie. I have a slightly different question. Mr. Secretary General, if you had the chance to talk to your younger self, let's say you were a student today, what values would you want this student to follow? Thank you.
Yeah, well, that's a very personal question. Of course, I have a political view, I have to tell you. I'm a member of the right of center Dutch Liberal Party. So I have a view on this, and that might differ with others in this room. But for me, the values are the freedom to express yourself, to steer your own life. And my advice to students always is, chart out your own life. You will get many people telling you that it's not working, this has been tried before, why do you do it like this? My advice would be very patient with these people, because they mean well, but don't follow their advice. Because probably they're not right, because this is the world we got to so far, and you have to build a new world. So find your own way ahead in life, and the possibilities are endless. I mean, we live in dangerous times, but also in fascinating times. Yes, there are many risks we have to face, but also many opportunities. And for young people to be studying now, here in Poland, a free, sovereign country, part of Europe, part of the NATO alliance, knowing that you protect the other nations and the other nations will protect you. It is an amazing time to be alive. It's an amazing time to be a student. And again, be patient, be kind to people advising you how to deal with life choices, but not always follow them. Follow your own path.
Thank you for this answer. And last.
Good afternoon. I'm a bachelor student in the SGH Russell School of Economics, Kusenda Mahina. And in your speech and answering the questions, you've previously mentioned that the United States nuclear umbrella is crucial and irreplaceable safety guarantee for the NATO. However, the current volatility in the United States geopolitical stance raised concerns regarding the viability of European security absent US. And my question is Europe still secure, independent of the United States, or without American allies we are in serious jeopardy?
We are safe because we are together. We are safe because we are together in NATO with the United States. The United States is a democracy, so you will have a change of governments in the United States. Joe Biden left, Donald Trump came in. And Joe Biden had views on many issues. Donald Trump had his approach and his views on many issues. But on this issue of this 76-year-old alliance, collective defense, one for all for one, staying together, he is absolutely clear. And that is important. And when it comes to the nuclear umbrella as our ultimate guarantor, it's there, it will stay. And again, I'm all my respect to the French and the Brits, but in the end, it's no alternative to the American nuclear umbrella.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary General. I hope that you found this time very inspiring and interesting, as you see the variety of questions from both communities, and I hope that you remember this time in Poland very well, and please come to Warsaw once again, and we wish you all the best in your work as a Secretary General of NATO. So, and now please join the office.